today we're going to be checking out some tree cores and showing you guys how to core some trees and what you can learn from coring a tree. So we're just going to be showing off what we got in our backpack. So most importantly for tree coring is our increment borer. And we got our shovel, which we are going to use for a different section, but we can all fit this all just in this little backpack that we have here. Our Munsell book, which is also used for the soil analysis. And then we got our trusty little straws that we use to transport tree cores. They're great because the tree cores slide right in there. And that can fit all in that. So now we're going to be setting up our tree core, or our increment borer. First step, you gotta unscrew the top here, which actually has our boring bit in it. So you slide that right out. And there's a little tab there. And you'll pop that off, kind of slide that open. Yep, slide that right open. Take the square end, put it straight through, and there's kind of a little groove that you'll slide that into, and it'll lock in place, and it won't be able to slide out. So for this step, we're just going to actually be boring the tree itself. So we're kind of shove that metal bit and kind of put it right against the tree, and you're going to push in and start spinning. And then while it's spinning, once the bit gets all the way in there, it'll start going pretty quick. And so our goal is to go about halfway into the tree, and so just past the center of the core is the goal. So now we're going to be removing the core, so we'll slide that little rod in there, and the little rod's got tiny little teeth on the end, so it can kind of cup and grab the tree core. Now we take it and spin it about a full turn backwards, which will snap the core off and release it. You just slide it nice and steadily out and kind of cover it with our hand, because in case it falls off, we don't want it to fall off and break into a bajillion pieces. And then, if we're nice and careful, we have a nice beautiful core, just like the one we have here. So now we're going to be taking our core and inserting into our straw. So what I like to do is kind of slide the straw over the core and the rod, and slide it all the way until it's done. And then if it's a nice long one, you might need to use two straws. You can grab your second straw and slide it in from the other end, and slide it over. And then once it slides over the other end, you can actually slide the straws inside of each other, which will kind of seal it off so that it doesn't break apart and keeps it all in one piece. Or if you need to transport it a little bit smaller, you can break it off and have it in two different straws. You just got to make sure to label which end is which end, so you know what you're looking at when you get back to the lab or wherever you're going to count the rings. I say on our tree core here, we actually have lines that we marked out ourselves at every inch interval, so you can roughly estimate the middle of the tree using it, but normally we'll use a tree caliper, which is just a giant ruler designed to get trees widths. Now we're going to core our second tree, so we'll just simply put the bit up against the bark and push on it, and then start spinning to the right, and keep spinning until you get about halfway through the tree, or a little over halfway through the tree. So now we're going to be removing the tree core on our second tree. So we're simply going to give it that turn backwards, give it a partial turn backwards. We can start removing the core itself. And do it nice and slowly, because we don't want to drop it, because if we drop it and it hits the ground, it's going to be hard to find or even hard to realign the direction. So there's our nice beautiful little core. So now we're going to be looking at the cross section of a tree, and the part we're looking at right now is called the sapwood. It's the area that's actually living. So this is where all the nutrients are, and all the water and the sugars are. So the water is being transported through this layer called the sap layer. So the part we're looking at now is called the hardwood. So this is what gives the tree its strength, and it doesn't really transport any nutrients or sugars or anything like that. So it's practically dead. It's not really currently growing. So the part we're looking at right now, that little gray spot, is actually where a branch once was. So that's actually where the branch was, but then the tree grew around it. So you can kind of see where the branch started and how long ago it was actually there, and it kind of got overgrown. So now that we're back in the lab, we're actually going to be attaching our cores to this board right here. It's pretty much just a board with some nice grooves sawn into it, which would make a nice spot for the cores themselves to sit. So now we're going to be actually attaching the core to it, so we'll carefully slide our core out of this straw here. And we got a nice core, so it's not breaking apart. Some of them can be pretty crumbly, but this will be nice and easy to attach. And so what we're going to do to attach it is simply put some of our super scientific Elmer's glue right into the groove there, and we're just going to press our core into it. So we're going to repeat those steps for our next two cores. We glue them down on the board like this because it makes it a lot easier to count, and it's just a very easy way to store them. You can store them by your study, so if you have a bunch from one study, you can put them all on one board, and makes it nice and easy for comparisons, and they don't get lost very easily. And they last a long time sitting here. And now, once the glue has dried, we are actually going to be sanding down just the top of the cores. I like to sand them down a little bit until you have a nice flat surface, because it kind of helps the cores themselves and the rings themselves show up a little bit better. So by sanding them down, it can make it a bit easier to count, because you will be counting on a flat surface. And some of the blemishes from coring and some of the dirt will be removed as well as from the staining. So it just looks a bit cleaner, it's easier to count. So what we're looking at here is actually the center of the tree, and so if you see where that one ring is fully visible, so you can see the whole circle of it, that's how you know that you hit the center. And so you want to stop counting there. You don't want to count beyond that, or else you're counting the other side of the tree. So if you look here, you can see how there's a middle spot right there. The rings are really compact on top of each other. That's an indication that there was a stretch of really poor growing years for this tree. But now looking at this section, you can see that the rings are much more spread apart. That means these years they were growing a bit faster, or quite a bit faster on some of the seasons. And so then if you look at a tree and you look at its rings, you can kind of get the history of the tree and see how well it's doing. Because some of the years can be real good and some of them can be real bad. Some of these things can be changed by the weather or even just by competition. So if they have a really long winter, it could make it harder for the tree to grow. Or if they have another tree next to them that's blocking out of the sun, they might have a couple of years of poor growth until something happens to that tree. So a lot of different ways that can affect this. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below.